Hello everyone, I extend a warm welcome to all the students watching today's lecture. I shall be discussing about the types of companies in this lecture today. Now before starting with the types of companies, I would like to tell you about what a company is. A company may be described to mean a voluntary association of persons who have come together for carrying on some business and sharing the profits arising from such business. The company has perpetual succession and is a separate legal entity. Now, the meaning of separate legal entity is that the company will, the meaning of perpetual succession rather is that the company will continue forever unless dissolved by legal process called winding up. And the meaning of being a separate legal entity is that the identity of the company is distinct from the members, so as to say that the property of the company is that of the company and not the members. It will be sued in the name of the company, in its own name only, and not in the name of its members. The assets of the company belong to the company and not to any of the members. Also, the creditors can only proceed against the company for any debt which is due to them and not against the member of the company. This is basically the meaning of separate legal entity. So, the company is a separate legal entity. Though generally companies are formed for the purpose of earning profit, there can be companies which are formed for the charitable purposes, for promotion of some type of sports, art, science, culture, or even religion. This company form of organization has been in existence since past many centuries. In fact, some of the oldest companies in India were established as early as 16th century. Some of the oldest companies in India were like Wadia Group, the Dabur Aditya Birla Group, the Kirloskar Group, Britannia Group, and so many more. In fact, the concept of Companies Act was taken from the English Companies Act 1844. And the first company legislation in India was passed in the year 1850, which was known as Joint Stock Companies Act. This act was replaced by Joint Stock Companies Act of 1857, which introduced the principle of limited liability for the first time in India. And this particular act of 1857 was in fact modified also several times, and later on the Indian Companies Act 1913 was passed following the English Companies Act 1908. In fact, whatever Companies Act we have always had, they were based broadly on the English Companies Act. So, whenever there was a new English Companies Act launched in England, there was a parallel Companies Act based on that act launched in India as well. And finally, the Companies Act 1956 was passed after independence and came into force from 1st April 1956. And it was also based on the English Companies Act 1943. Then after several years, Companies Act 2013 was passed by the Parliament. It came into force on 29th August 2013. The Act contains 470 sections, 29 chapters and 7 schedules. So, this Act which we presently have, the Companies Act 2013, it is divided into 470 sections, 29 chapters and 7 schedules. Schedules are additional information, you can say, given at the end of the Act. So, there are 7 schedules given at the end of the Companies Act 2013. Now, let me come to the types of companies. Many different types of companies can be registered under the Companies Act 2013. They can be classified on various bases. On the basis of liability, we can classify the companies as companies limited by shares, then companies limited by guarantee, and unlimited liability company. Then we can also divide companies on the basis of number of members. On the basis of number of members, we have private company, we have public company, then we have one person company. Then further, on the basis of control, we have different types of companies, associate companies, holding companies, subsidiary companies, foreign companies, government companies, and public financial institutions. Then we can also divide companies on the basis of access to capital market. There are listed companies and unlisted companies. Listed means those who are listed on some stock exchange, recognized stock exchange, and unlisted means those who are not listed on any stock exchange. Then there are certain other types of companies as well, which can be registered under the Companies Act 2013. They are small company, dormant company, startup company, not-for-profit company, and producer company. So, these are the various types of companies that can be registered under the Companies Act. Now, let's learn about each of them in detail. The first one was the companies limited by shares. The companies limited by shares are given in section 2 subsection 22 of the Companies Act 2013. Companies having share capital can have liability of members limited by shares. So, it is of course applicable, as the name suggests, to companies having share capital. As per section 2 subsection 22 of the Companies Act 2013, a company limited by shares means a company having the liability of its members limited by the memorandum of association to the amount, if any, unpaid on the shares held by them. Okay. So, this means that it is the liability of the members is limited only till the amount which still remains to be paid on the shares held by them. If suppose the shares are fully paid up, then the members are not liable for anything further. Okay, till the shares are partly paid up, they can be asked to called to pay the remaining amount. If the shares are fully paid up, their liability is no more. So, their liability is limited to the amount remaining unpaid on the shares. Now, once again, it is the liability of members of the company which is limited. The liability of the company is always unlimited, and it is always liable in an unlimited way for all the claims, all the expenses which are due by the company to its creditors. In case of shares, again as I told you, in case shares are fully paid up, members are not liable for anything else. It is only the company which is unlimitedly liable. Members are only liable till the amount of share capital which is subscribed by them and which still remains unpaid. Then the next kind of company is company limited by guarantee. Such a company is given in section 2 subsection 21 of the Companies Act. It is a company having the liability of its members limited by the memorandum to such an amount as the member may respectively undertake to contribute to the assets of the company in the event of it being wound up. It means that in such companies, the members give a guarantee that they will be giving a certain amount at the time of winding up of the company. So, that amount is guaranteed, and that amount company will call only at the time of winding up. In the lifetime of the company, that amount is not called for. So, that amount will be called only at the time of winding up. Say, for example, the members give a guarantee that they will be, they take a guarantee to contribute an amount of rupees 100 at the time of winding up of the company. Then the company can call that 100 rupee from that particular member when it winds up. And once the member has paid rupees 100, then there is no further liability on part of that member. That is all he needs to pay. So, this is the meaning of that the liability of member is limited to the amount guaranteed by such member. And such companies having liability limited by guarantee can also have share capital. So, we can have a guarantee company having share capital as well. So, in case a guarantee company is having share capital, in that case the liability of the member is limited to the amount he has guaranteed and also to the amount remaining unpaid on the shares taken up by that member. So, the liability becomes to the extent of amount guaranteed and also to the extent remaining unpaid on the shares held by that member. And once he has paid all the amount on the shares, that means the shares have become fully paid, then in that case no further liability remains from that member. And generally companies formed for the purpose, such guarantee companies are formed for the purpose of promotion of some art, some science, some culture, some religion. So as to say something in which a business is not being done, for the purpose of earning profit. It is some charitable purpose, maybe some religious purpose, wherein not much money is required, as no business is running. Therefore, such companies form as guarantee companies because there is no share capital in them. And for doing any business, we need share capital. That is why if any organization or if any group of people, they want to start such companies for promotion of art, science, culture or religion, they generally form it as a guarantee company. Then the next set of company is unlimited liability company or unlimited company, what we call them. The first two which I just told you were companies having limited liability, means the liability of members was limited either by share capital or by the amount guaranteed by them. This third category is of unlimited liability companies. This is given in section 2, subsection 92 of the Companies Act. Such companies have no limit on the liability of members. The liability of each of the member is towards the entire debt and liabilities of the company. The members, however, have the right to claim contribution from others. Means each member is jointly as well as severally liable. If the company is not able to pay debt, if it becomes bankrupt, then it can ask a contribution from even a single member, but that member has a right to claim proportionately from all other members of the company. This is what the meaning of is that each member is jointly as well as severally liable. The name of such companies ends with the word unlimited, like maybe cyber securities unlimited, for example, or it can have it in brackets like cyber's solution company, in brackets private company with unlimited liability. So either their name ends with the word unlimited, or they can have a name like cyber solutions company, and in bracket they have to write private company with unlimited liability, or if it can also be a public company, so they will write public company with unlimited liability. Achha, one thing is that even if it is an unlimited liability company, it's still the liability of members is not the same as partnership firm, wherein each partner can be proceeded against for any debt of the company. It is not so, because the liability of members in case of an unlimited liability company arises only on the winding up of the company. In the event that it becomes bankrupt, the creditors cannot also proceed against the members directly. They have to proceed against the company, and it is the company which will proceed against the members for any claims. That is, the reason for this is that even though the company has a unlimited liability, the members of the company have an unlimited liability, still the company is a separate legal entity. Therefore, the entity of members is different from the entity of the company, and whatever debt is due by the company towards any creditor, the creditor has to approach the company only. He or she cannot approach the members directly. And the members are liable for all the debts contracted by the company during his membership when he was a member, and also a member may however continue to be liable for 1 year after he ceases to be the member if winding up commences within this particular year. So, and the existing members are unable to meet the liabilities. So, if the existing members are unable to meet the liabilities, then all those members who were members, who are not now the member, but who were members within the past 1 year from the time of commencement of winding up, may also be called to contribute towards the assets of the company. So, they also remain liable, but only in case the present members are not able to meet the liabilities. In other words, both current and past members are required to contribute towards the payment of the liabilities to the extent they exceed the assets upon liquidation. Now, the Indian Companies Act as such does not offer any specific advantage for such companies to be incorporated. However, internationally such companies may get certain privileges, like no minimum paid up capital requirement or no requirement for filing accounts. So, generally instead of new company being, but generally what it happens is that instead of new company being incorporated as an unlimited liability company, an existing limited liability company may get itself converted into unlimited liability company to increase its goodwill in the market. So this is what generally happens, because it is very difficult for a company to be initially incorporated as an unlimited liability company. It will be difficult to find people to subscribe to such a company, to be members in such a company. So generally what happens is that the company which is already in existence, which is doing well, may get itself converted, and shareholders or the members of course generally agree to it also, because company is already doing well. So they are in not much of a risk, their assets are not in much of a risk, and shareholders agree to it, and such companies get converted into companies with unlimited liability. Then after unlimited liability companies, the next we have is private company. Now what exactly is a private company? Section 2, subsection 20, subsection 68 of the Companies Act defines a private company. As per section 2, subsection 68, a private company means a company having a minimum paid up share capital as may be prescribed. As may be prescribed means they are, it can be prescribed from time to time by the government, but presently there is no minimum requirement. Earlier it was, but now it has been removed. So a private company can be started with any amount of capital. There is no minimum which is required to start a private company. Then the next is that it restricts the right to transfer its shares. So a private company is a company which has prescribed specially in its article. Now these restrictions have to be written in the articles of association of the company. Okay. So in the articles of association it's specially written that such company will restrict the right to transfer its shares. Restriction of right to transfer means that the members, even though they will have the right to transfer shares, the right will not be a free right, it will be restricted, meaning thereby that whenever a member has to transfer or sell his shares, he has to first offer it to the existing shareholders. He cannot just freely offer it to anyone, he has to first offer it to existing shareholders, and then if the existing shareholders don't want to take it, then those shares can be offered to somebody else. That is the meaning of restriction on right to transfer the shares. Then the second requirement of being a private company is that except in case of one-person company, such a company limits the number of its members to 200. So the maximum limit or the maximum number of members a private company can have is 200, except of course in case of one-person company where there is going to be only one member and not more than that. And one-person company is a special type of private company. So the limit is not more than 200, provided that where two or more persons hold one or more than one share in a company jointly, they shall be counted as one member. Okay, so when ever there is a joint holding in case of a private company, the joint holders will be counted as one member. Also the person who are in employment of the company, or the persons who were formerly in employment of the company and were members of the company while they were in employment and have continued to be members of the company after the employment has ceased, they shall also not be counted towards counting that 200 maximum members. They will also not be counted. Means present employees who are members as well as past employees who were member when they were in employment and have continued to be members now after leaving the employment, both will not be counted towards this to 200. Then the third requirement is that it prohibits any invitation to public to subscribe for any securities of the company. So private company has this prohibition. It cannot invite general public to subscribe to its shares and debentures. If ever it has to raise finance from the finance, it has to offer its shares and debentures through a method which is known as private placement. Means the shares and debentures will be offered privately to people, maybe to somebody known to the members, to existing members, or maybe somebody known to the promoter, the entrepreneur. The shares will be offered privately to these people, and they will, if they agree, they will become the members of the company. There is not going to be any public subscription of shares, meaning that the company cannot go in for a public issue, it cannot make up advertisement in newspaper requesting people to subscribe to its shares and debentures. This is the meaning that there cannot be any public issue of such a company. The public issue in fact is there in case of public companies, but in case of private companies such a public issue is completely prohibited. Now, in case a company is a company which is not having share capital, if such a private company is there, it will not have the first restriction in its articles of association. The first restriction, as you can say, is restricts the right to transfer its shares. In case of a private company which is not having share capital, of course, then there is no point, no meaning of this first restriction, that is restriction on right to transfer shares. Therefore, such a company will not have this point number 1 in its articles of association, otherwise, and it will have the remaining 2 conditions in its articles of association, and otherwise for any other private company which is having share capital, it will have all the 3 restrictions. The meaning of having these 3 restrictions in the articles of association is that these 3 restrictions have to be written properly in the articles of association of the company. What is articles of association is that articles of association are the rules and regulations, internal rules and regulations of the company. So, and the last thing in this private company is that the minimum number of person required to start a private company is 2, other than a 1-person company which requires just 1 member. So, it has to be started by minimum 2 members and maximum cannot be more than 200. The name of a private company must end with the word private limited or PVT Ltd as it is called in short, other than a 1-person company where it should end with OPC. So, in case of all private companies, it must end with the word private limited, PVT Ltd, or other than a 1-person company which is also a private company, but its name should end with the word OPC, meaning 1-person company. Say for example, Cyber Solutions OPC, and if it's a normal private company, it's Cyber Solutions Private Limited, like this. If the membership of a private company falls below 2, then as per section 450 of the Companies Act, the company and every officer in default shall be fined up to rupees 10,000, and where the contravention is a continuing one, then with a further fine of 1,000 per day of default, subject to a maximum of 2 lakh. So, if the membership ever falls below 2 people, then such a company will be fined rupees 10,000 and also 1,000 per day till the membership remains low, and also subject to a maximum of 2 lakhs. And in case of a company, in case of any member officer in default, he shall be punishable with the fine of rupees 50,000. So, this is the penalty in case the number of members in a private company falls below the statutory limit, which is 2 minimum. So, in fact, this is all I have in this particular part of the lecture on types of companies, and I hope all of you have understood about various types of companies, namely companies limited by shares, companies limited by guarantee, unlimited liability company, and private company. And I will continue with the remaining companies in the next part. So, thank you all, keep learning, keep shining.